right, so I'm here with Will and Zach, as well as Robert. We are here to kind of talk a little bit of Game of Thrones. Guys, you've been playing in the Melee.
Definitely.
Tell us, start with you, Will. How's the day been? Is this, Melee as usual? Is there anything new this GenCon? Anything you didn't expect to see?
A lot of things were expected, I think. Numbers are down a little bit this year from last year. We had, I want to say it was 77 for Melee last year. K-Tom said it was 63 this year. So it's down a little, but I think that's to be expected since since FFG moved the championship, the World Championship. I had no hand in that. There's the anti-collusion rules, which have been kind of
now, how does
iffy.
What does that look like? How does that actually pan out in the game? What does that mean mechanically that players can and can't do?
That's a great question. On our show, Brett and I said there is no definition in the tourney rules, and that's a problem because there's no way for a TO to really say for sure. You're relying on them. But for what K-Tom and Nate are saying here is basically, as long as it's in the context of the game, we're good. We had a question come up in my first game, actually. One of the guys that came up from South America was asking, because I was checking with other people who might play a reset. Like, so we don't double reset here. What might be going on? And he was uncertain about that. But yeah, table talk and wheeling and dealing in-game, still okay. But
still totally
the
fine.
way K-Tom kind of explained it was, if as a judge he can see that the move you're making is clearly in no way whatsoever beneficial to you, and you consistently do that, that's where it's a problem. So
that gets kind of sticky, huh?
It is sticky, but it's like if he's at 13 power and I'm at 10, and I'm like, give your guy renown, and he's like asking me, it's like a team thing. It has to be. Basically, the judge has to say it is.
Yeah, that's still awkward. Like this last game I was just in, where I was telling you guys that they just obliterated me with Condemned by the Realm. Like after that, all I had on the board that mattered were 2 scouting vessels. It didn't help me at all to start using them for other people, but I just wanted the game to be over in this third round. Was I colluding? No one called me on it.
And it's also sticky too, because I had a game where the guy next to me, to my left, had initiative, and I actually let him win an unopposed challenge against me, so that he would win the game.
Yeah.
But I was sitting in second place. So by not blocking and giving him the unopposed power, I could guarantee that he would win game ends, and the other 2 guys who are at like 10 or 11 can't jump me or get to 15.
Yeah, does this kind of speak to a deeper maybe problem or issue with the Melee format in general, where you have 4 players, some of which might know each other from hometown meadows or whatever, who are actually wanting, their group to win? Or even if they don't, just you have players who are, trying to win, and it's essentially a free-for-all. So in a free-for-all, more or less anything goes. The structure is very open. You can talk about anything you want. Does that lead to, a Melee format that just, isn't as fun as it could be? Should they structure it more? Should it be less tabletop? Do you see any as issues with the game?
For me, it's tough for Melee to be a really viable competitive format for all sorts of reasons. Melee, on my part, is so beautiful and so fun with a group of people because of the table talk, and it really feels like you're playing a Game of Thrones, like in the show or in the movies or whatever. So it's tough to regulate that. Another piece is because you get points for second and third and fourth, certain amounts, it gets really fishy. Because he can make it where I get first and he gets second. We know each other, so we just totally lock 2 players out and one of us walks away with a win.
Yeah.
And ultimately, because there are 3 players, if 2 or 3 of them don't want you to win, good luck. So for me, as a competitive format, it's, tying the national championship to Melee and Joust is kind of funky, and having it be so important, I'm not a fan.
What about you, Will? What do you think?
Honestly, I've got to echo most all of those thoughts. It's so much a personality-driven game, not just the people that like to chat and talk and table talk and make it feel like Game of Thrones, like Zach said, but there are players around here, I won't name names, but there are some that, a la the Dark Knight, just want to watch the world burn. And that causes a problem for everybody that's trying to experience this. And then when, like Zach said, when you've got that counted in for the national championship, there are people like myself today. I did poorly today. I'm just out. Like, there is no way I can now win
if
at all.
If you went undefeated tomorrow in the joust.
Yeah, it just does not matter.
Yeah.
So, it's awkward. I would rather they just split it into 2 championships.
Yeah.
The folks that are okay with playing Melee, they do it. They have their thing. Joust has their thing.
And for me, like, the Melee event could be so much more, it'd be so much less intense and more fun if it weren't tied so competitively to the national championship.
Yeah, it puts a lot of pressure.
Yeah, because it's like, I need every point, so I need to get second or third, or let's say at the end you power challenge me when we both have 10 power, and you win the game off of that.
Yeah, could have easily been otherwise. So, and I've had this for a while. I think Melee, as we agree, it's a great format, right? But, as a casual format, it allows players to actually enjoy the game. And as a competitive format, it can just get really kind of sticky, it seems like. It can cause a lot of problems and actually, like, create a lot of hostilities between players, which I don't think, any game really wants to do. So you think the best solution is maybe to have like a Melee championship and a Joust championship as kind of separate entities?
I mean, they are separate entities right now. So there's going to be a Melee championship with a trophy
as
and
like
Joust.
a champion, right?
But like tying the Melee in it all to the Joust is where I think it goes.
Yeah, I think part of it is because of the prize pool. Really, the only prize that we know of at all are the trophies and the designing card. And designing the card is what everybody wants. And that part does hinge on both Melee and Joust.
And what would you guys say to the people who, and there are quite a few who think that Game of Thrones is a Melee format game? They sell it with 4 decks and the core box and all this kind of thing. What do you say to the people who are like, oh no, this is a competitive format through and through, and it's something that you need to master one way or another, and it needs to be duly represented here along with Joust to have a unified title?
I think they are right. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that the two have to be tied together for this overall prize. But because so much of it is personality-based, those folks obviously are in a group where their personalities mesh well enough that they enjoy that play and whatnot. Our group back home in Springfield it has the personalities that can do with that. So the experience varies so much that I can't, dictate to them that it's not. So I'd say it's a valid opinion.
Okay. So we've experimented a bit at home with a Melee format we call Silent Sisters, which is where you can't talk at all except to declare challenges and attacks and whatnot.
Talk about the game.
That reminds me of something that came up last year as far as in the collusion vein and whatnot. A player last year, who shall remain nameless, but might have been involved in a later game that forced that ruling, actually got it cleared with K-Tom that he can whisper, like if the 4 of us were at a table and I had something going on, I could whisper to Zach about it.
Wow.
So that you guys can't hear.
What?
That's not
Blew
right.
my mind too.
Really?
That's not right.
It made me want to start like texting people. Like if I'm at the table with somebody whose number I have,
Let's win
him.
Go ahead and start doing that before the game starts.
Yeah.
What's your number?
Really, it's just tough because like if any 2 of us 3 were at the same table, it's like
we're never going to attack each other.
Unless the other 2 guys know
Unless
the other 2 guys know each other, it's really not fair.
Right.
So like if we bring 8 people from Tulsa next year, that's where I'm picturing. It's just like we could have easily had 10 people away from Tulsa. So 1 out of 6 players is us, and that could just be
iffy. Yeah. So we think maybe ultimately the solution is either make Melee less competitive, or if it's going to be competitive, maybe set some boundaries on what can be discussed and what can't be, like actual not physical boundaries, but like actual boundaries that aren't just these vague
subjectivity
things.
A lot.
But I mean, just cut it off. Just no.
Ultimately, like having a Melee championship is awesome. People that enjoy Melee play it. It's a great time. I've had every game I played it was great.
And the deck building is a different monster.
It's
too.
completely different deck building. The social aspect, you meet a lot of people. It's a great format. But I think it should just be its own thing. Like, I still think it should happen. Even with the talking that goes on now, I'm not concerned with. It's really just like you were saying, to design the card, you're out.
Yeah.
You could undefeated Joust, and because of how you performed today, there's no way. And that's just...
And that's a letdown. I think there will be people that don't play on the second day because of that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah. So speaking of jousts, anything that you guys are expecting out of the ordinary, or decks that you're scared of? Any of that going around the convention? Having seen Melee now and having talked to the players,
Scared of everything.
yeah.
No, it's tricky. One thing about the Thrones meta and the guys that come out to these sort of events that I've learned over the last 7 years of coming to GenCon, these guys change their minds so often on what they're playing. People like Greg and Rings and John Bruno and whatnot are building their decks the night or the morning before and stuff. I'm not sure, probably out of those 7 years, at least 4 of those are decks that the guys won, they built those the night before.
Nice.
And so it's so hard to predict because the ideas are still zipping back and forth, and you come here and you chat with a guy from Tennessee that you haven't seen since last Gen Con, and suddenly something clicks.
Yeah.
It suddenly becomes very volatile the instant you get here.
Yeah. And do you think this speaks to the balance of the game itself? To me right now, it feels like every house can bring something that I'm scared of. Do you feel the same way? Is it in a good state of balance right now as far as the different houses are concerned?
I think the houses are about as close really as they have been. More than anything, I think what's pushing people at the moment are shininess, as far as, the Red Queen's Faithful is brand new, super powerful, but also brand new, so people latch onto that.
Yeah.
Sorrowful Man just got fixed here in quotes, and suddenly that's shiny, so people look at that. Versus something like Lannister feels less powerful because it's essentially the same tricks it's been doing for a year now.
Yeah.
And it's not very shiny. So, but
Which is ironic for Lannister.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I've got you here, Will, what do you make of the free cities that have just been released? You have the Lannister Ally, and you have the Targaryen, the Baratheon Knight. Do you think these really are going to change the way that the game is played and lead to a whole lot more splashing? Or is this just kind of just another thing that might see some play in combo decks, other than that it's not going to do much?
I am a huge fan of all the Kingdom locations so far. Which is awkward. They're huge Shaga cards, and I'm totally a Shaga player, so I love this sort of thing. Especially things like Ally or Knight or Lord, there are great options to splash, and a lot of options to splash. So it's fun for a while, but I am afraid, and I've seen this happen in our meta start already, suddenly everybody is just playing, Newly Made Lord in every deck, or Jorah Mormont in every deck, which leads to some homogeneity. Or if I pronounce that right, I'm not even...
I'll take it as a word.
Okay. I also think, there are some cards that, why is this a Lannister ally? And it might not make sense in a Lannister deck that all of a sudden, like a lot of older cards to me, you can use in different ways now.
Yeah,
which is cool.
It pushes some new combos and designs and ideas, definitely.
Sure.
But yeah, there are some like Jorah Mormonts that are just like...
Easy. So do you think this is by design? Do you think this is intended, to get people to use cards from other houses more in their decks?
Maybe some. It's interesting. FFG and Game of Thrones as a whole has a pretty mixed history of dealing with combos and synergies and the like. So it feels like, in one way they'll make a push to try and strengthen that possibility rather than just strictly aggro and control sort of options, and then go too far and slap it down. Things like Robert and the Killer of the Wounded just fairly recently getting things resolved.
Yeah, it's not that.
So I'm afraid that this may wind up being, they're like, oh, okay, here's a completely different way for us to try and push some kind of combo stuff, and we're gonna, over the course of the next year, people are going to experiment with it. Something broken may be found, and we're going to get a huge slap down on this too. So we'll see.
All right, man. Do you have any other questions? Anyone else want to say anything? Clear your mind?
Excited about the joust?
Excited about the joust.
And ready to see who makes top 16 in this melee.
Yeah. No, you're kind of close, right? You got second in all your melees.
I did get second in every melee, so...
It's reasonable.
I don't know what that means.
Okay. So... to close it out, this is Will, and you are 2 champs and a chump.
Yeah, I'm Kenan. If you're around on any of the sites, that's my name everywhere.
He's both 2 champs and a chump.
Oh,
yes.
All 3. We have Zach here, who's from our camp, Robert and I from Two Guys One Throne. Thanks for watching, and we'll keep you updated.